now gives me great pleasure to welcome and invite Heather J. MacKenzie. Her passion in life is connecting people, ideas and organisations in a meaningful way to accelerate their purpose. She lives in Denver, Colorado, has 6 children, and she's a very busy lady. She also has worked for General Electric, Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble. She's an entrepreneur, speaker, diversity champion and inspiration to so many. And we're going to hear also about her role with startups and startup ecosystems through SheEO and Core and Startup Catalyst more recently, where she has been able to bring fresh perspectives and help solve some big challenges and focus on some wicked problems. Please give Heather a very warm Sunshine Coast welcome. Thank you.
Wow, I feel like I have a lot to live up to after that. Here's hoping I can deliver. Good evening. Thanks for coming out. What if I told you that there were ways that you could reduce your risk of cancer, of heart disease, of diabetes, of depression, without any medication, without changing your diet, without changing your exercise routine? How many of you would think, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that? Anyone? Yeah? Hands up. How many of you would think, I'm just crazy? That's also an okay answer. And you're not wrong. There's a little bit of crazy in every redhead. So we're going to talk tonight through the story of my personal journey and my transformation, how I came to understand what these things are that could be done, that could change physical and mental health outcomes for me, and they can change for you. And through that journey, how it has led me to finding my true purpose in life and making the transformation that I had always dreamed of, but never thought was possible. So I used to think that transformation was just something you did. I am this now, I want to be that. I just got a whole lot louder. I was this, I want to be that, I'll transform, right? It's like the butterfly, you go in the cocoon, you come out, you have wings, it's all great. As humans, it doesn't really work that way. The first step to true transformation is awareness. This is one of my favorite quotes. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. I was certainly stuck in this position of not even having the awareness. I knew that I wanted something more. I knew that I wanted something different. I knew that I had a purpose that I wasn't living, but I couldn't figure out why my life kept going the way it was going. And by outward appearances, it was very successful. I've worked in some of the biggest companies in the world. I've worked in very successful startups. I took a startup from $1 million in revenue to $110 million in revenue in 24 months at the age of 30. I am a solo parent of 6 children, including 1 severely special needs child. I was raising them well. I had good friends. I had a beautiful home. I had this really cool Audi that I'd still kept and I love. I had all these things, but I was missing something inside and I couldn't figure out what it was. And in 2014, I began an intentional journey to figure out how I got from where I was to where I wanted to be. And this was the first step, awareness. The second step was understanding. So understanding what patterns we each carry in our lives, how they got there, how they're established, and then how we can shift them. Until you understand how to do it, you can't do it, right? If somebody says, go build a house, and you have no idea how to actually construct one, it's pretty hard to build. So it's having the understanding before you can take the action. And then the transformation is actually the result. It's not something we do, it's something that is a result. So here was the first step to understanding for me. ACEs, not the card game, not Las Vegas. Adverse childhood experiences. So I had no understanding of what this was until I started doing some research and some study and talking to some experts. But ACEs is actually the acronym given by 2 different groups in the United States that did a very famous health study. It started in the 1990s. Kaiser Permanente, which is the United States' premier health maintenance organization, and our federal Centers for Disease Control partnered together to start to understand how adverse childhood experiences affected adults, both in physical and mental health. And that sort of the catalyst or the spark for that was one of the leading researchers was running a weight loss program for morbidly obese people, right? So Kaiser is a health maintenance organization. They really push preventative medicine. And they had all these people enrolled, and they were losing weight, but they still weren't happy. They still didn't have as dramatic an effect on their physical health as they thought possible. And they were just these sort of missing pieces. And so they started this this study. It was a 10-year longitudinal study following 17,000 people in the United States. So pretty good sample size. And what they were able to correlate were 10 specific experiences that some of us have had as children that have an effect on your physical and mental health as an adult. I've learned doing this presentation enough times that I have to show you the 10 things, or you'll all start Googling ACEs and I will lose all of you. So here are the 10 that they correlated most strongly. It's 3 categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. You can read them for yourselves. But these are certainly not the only things that can happen in childhood that will have an effect on you as an adult. But these were the 10 most common correlated to poor health outcomes. And so I started sort of investigating this for myself, and I share more than half of the ACEs. I grew up in a very chaotic household. My father was very physically, violently abusive to my mother, so I witnessed that. That's over there in the household dysfunction side. My father's also an alcoholic, functioning, but an alcoholic. My mother got cancer when I was young, and I ended up kind of caring for the family, and then she died when I was at university. And you know what? I moved past it, and I thought, well, that was that, and on I go. And I've been very successful, right? I graduated university at 19. I started at Procter & Gamble at 19, married my childhood sweetheart, started having kids. Everything seemed to be going great, and I had no understanding that what had happened as a child was actually still ruling me unconsciously or subconsciously. So this is the picture that I love to put up to give you an illustration of what's going on in our brains. So when we're young, our brains are developing very quickly. And they begin to form these patterns, these neural pathways, if you will. So if this happens, and then this is the result, the neural pathway gets formed and gets reinforced. So if I'm hungry and someone feeds me, that becomes my expectation, that when I'm hungry, I will be fed. If I cry and somebody comforts me, that becomes your expectation. In dysfunction, the same thing actually happens. And those pathways are formed in your brain. And so as a child, they're just pathways. And then as you grow up, these become more like grooves in the brain, right? So all these pathways are established. And then over time, they become ruts, right? And if you've ever driven on a road like this that's ruts, it's really hard to get the car to go anywhere else. And so that's what is essentially going on with adverse childhood experiences, is that your brain develops this pattern, and it actually seeks to confirm the pattern, even if it's an unhealthy one. That was the craziest thing to me, because I thought, well, I'm making good decisions, and look at this family I'm raising, and I have good friends, and I don't understand what's happening. But on an unconscious or subconscious level, what I learned was that my brain actually craved chaos, because it's what I grew up with. And I became very competent in chaos at a very young age. And so over time, I would unconsciously seek out chaos. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in a few minutes. So here are some of the effects that they found. If you carry some of these ACEs, these are the most likely behavioral, physical, and mental health outcomes that you'll see as an adult if you don't do some repatterning, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Here are some, to me, startling statistics. In this study in America, they found that 2/3 of Americans had experienced at least one ACE, one adverse childhood experience. If you've had one, 87% of people had multiple. If you've had 4 of these 10 anytime in your formative years, you have a 2-fold increase in cancer risk, 4-fold increase in heart disease, 400% increase in clinical depression, 700% increase in alcoholism. If you've had 6 or more of these in your life, you carry a 3,000% greater chance of attempting or committing suicide, simply by things you're not even aware are driving your life. And this was like this massive aha moment, right? Like, okay, this began the awareness. So these are the outcomes that they found. How do we change things? First of all, here's a link where you can go take the survey yourself. It's 10 questions. It's also on my Facebook business page, and I'll share with you all my connection stuff at the end. But this is another thing I've learned that I better show people now, or they start to go looking for it and like, oh my God, what's my score? How am I faring? So there's that for you as well. Yeah, we're gonna get back to that in a minute. So let's go into kind of why I got here and how I got here with this information and this understanding that was percolating. So I started to understand that I was being ruled, if you will, unconsciously by patterns, but I didn't know really what effect they were having on my life. And I also knew that I had a greater purpose in this lifetime than working in corporate America. And even then raising 6 amazing children, there was something more I was to be doing and I couldn't figure out what it was. And every time I'd try to take a step out of the comfort of a really high-paying corporate career, I would get scared. Fear would creep in. And so I would step back. Well, in 2014, I think the universe got tired of this from me and basically hit me over the head with a 2x4 in the form of a sexual assault in the workplace. So at the end of 2014, I'm working for a very big company. I'm managing $1 billion, my team and I, not just me, but my team and I, we're managing $1 billion of business across 24 P&Ls, taking care of my company's largest client in the world. And I was instructed from one of the CEOs on the client side that I needed to meet with this gentleman who's very, very influential. He's really the goose that lays the golden eggs for them in terms of revenue. And they were going to build him this fantastic medical center. And so they needed me to understand kind of the ins and outs and what was happening. So this guy would not agree to meet in an office. He would not agree to meet at a hospital. He would only meet in a 5-star restaurant. Had to send a limousine for him, as you do on a Tuesday night. I don't know, that's not my lifestyle. And so we scheduled this dinner, and I brought members of my clinical team and my technical team with me. And again, I'm feeling in my power because I'm this powerful executive and I got all my stuff figured out, right? And we're in the midst of the meal, actually towards the end, at dessert. They came around to take our dessert orders, and I had been sitting next to this man during the meal because I'm trying to build rapport with him and see what it is he needs. And the server asked him first, since he's the guest of honor, what is it you would like for dessert, sir? And in like a split second, really it was a split second, he reached around with one arm, reached around me, unzipped my dress down to my waist, took his other hand and put it up my skirt, and announced to the table that what he would like for dessert was a beer and, are there any children other than a baby? A beer and a BJ from me, in front of a team of executives and in front of my team. And then what happened next was even more surprising. Nobody said a word. Nobody. There were men and women at this table, but this man is so influential. He really is a global influencer. Nobody said a word. The first word that was said was by the highest ranking executive on the client side, and he said, "Oh my, look at the time, got to go. I have a wife and child at home." And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna walk out with this guy, because maybe in private, he'll say something different to me. So we're walking out, I have to go back in, my team's there and everything. And as we're walking out, he puts his arm around me and he says, "Hey, Heather, thanks for taking one for the team." Okay. Clearly also not what I was expecting. The whole evening was quite unexpected for Miss Heather. Evening finishes, we get him packed off in his limo, and I started thinking, like, what do I do with this? It had certainly not been the first time I'd experienced sexual harassment in the workplace in my career, and I see a lot of women in the audience nodding, like this is sadly a thing that we experience a lot, and some men do too. But this was the most egregious, and it was certainly at the highest point of my career, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. We were renegotiating a contract with this client, 3-year term. $3 billion of business on the line, 250 people's jobs on my team. So I elected not to report it. I just thought, I'll wait until we're done with the contract. I don't want to risk losing jobs. You can't go and wring the neck of the golden goose during the midst of a contract renegotiation and really expect that it's going to end too well. So I made that decision. Fast forward like a month or two, and I get a phone call from HR saying somebody else had reported it. Without my permission, without my knowledge. I will pause at this point and say, if you witness harassment or abuse of any kind in your workplace, please include the survivor in whatever you're trying to do. I know it was a woman who reported it. I know who she is. And I know that she was coming from a good place in her heart, right? She thought she was helping me. But it actually was a re-victimization because I didn't get to choose the moment and the story and everything else. And so I still was operating with some degree of naivete about this because I thought, oh good, the Calvary's arrived and they're going to help me. The first two questions I was asked by HR and legal, what did you wear to the dinner? How much alcohol did you drink at the dinner? Then they confiscated my computer because they wanted to look through all my emails to see the nature of my relationship with this man. Okay, HR, and I have many friends who are in HR, I respect what they're doing. I was still naively assuming that they were there to protect the employees. They're not. They're there to protect the company and the revenue. And so I'm still sort of reeling from this revelation, and we're in the midst of the contract negotiation, and now there are like a few people at my company who know what's going on. And within 2 weeks, HR came back to me and they said, so for your own safety and your own protection, we are moving you to London. I was like, what? I live in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a single mom with 6 children. I'm most certainly not moving to London. Oh, but it's more money and it's less travel. It'll be great. And I was like, definitely not. They come back at around another week or two later and they said, okay, even better deal. We're moving you to Chicago. We know that 2 of your sons live in Chicago, so you'll be happy there. You have some family, it's established. And for a split second, because again, it was the more money and the less travel and it's gonna be this big deal for you. For a split second, I was like, I can learn how to do that job. I'm pretty confident, I'm a quick learner. And then my intuition kicked in and I realized they are trying to move me geographically far away into a role I'm not really prepared for, and they're gonna performance manage me out of this company, a company I've spent a decade with as a very high performer, consistently high performer. And that was when I decided to hire an all-female legal team. So I hired these women, they couldn't believe what was going on, they immediately sort of stepped in, and we began sort of the negotiation process to make my exit. And so there were like 3 or 4 people inside the company who knew what was going on. I was not allowed, I was instructed by my own HR that I couldn't speak to my team about this, I couldn't speak to anybody on the client side about this, I had to be completely silent. So you can imagine it's sort of eating away at you, right? I have like my girlfriends and my lawyers. I don't really want to talk too much to my kids, although they were teens and 20s at that time a few years ago. And here was the moment when everything came crashing down. My team and I were managing 155 multi-million-dollar construction projects simultaneously at this point in time. And my company wasn't paid, they didn't get their revenue until the client signed off and said it's all done. So lots of pressure to get these across the line. And so these people knew one way or another, Heather's not gonna be in this role that she's been in for many years. And it's not that I'm super important or super smart, but I was just sort of like, I knew the political landscape and all the players and everything that was going on. And so I was sitting in this hospital parking lot, gearing up for a meeting with the CEO where I was gonna try to get him to sign off on, I don't know, remember, $7.5 million project. And it wasn't really quite complete. And my boss called me while I was sitting in the parking lot, sort of gathering myself. And this was a man I had worked for many years, a man I respected. And he said, you've got to get this done and you got to get him to sign it today and you da-da-da-da-da. And I said, ethically, I'm not sure I feel great about that because there's this little part that's not finished and this, and like there's just some, and he actually said to me, Heather, do did you ever think it would have just been easier to give him the BJ? Look at all the problems you're causing. I lost it. I started crying, super unprofessional, hung up the phone with him, called my lawyers, said, I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown. I cannot continue with this type of pressure. Something has got to change while you're negotiating. And they said, we agree. We've been seeing you in the meetings with us and you're barely keeping it together and I'm not sleeping and I'm having panic attacks and all these things are happening. And so they said, all right, we're gonna talk to the company's lawyers and we're gonna get you out on some sort of a leave, like a medical leave, a stress leave, or something. A few days later, I'm in the car with my children driving to my youngest son, my number 5 child, my youngest son's high school graduation. So it's already kind of an emotional day, right? It's your kid graduating high school. And I get the call from my lawyers. Today's your last day. The negotiation's far from complete, but we're pulling you out. You cannot answer an email. You cannot answer a phone call. You cannot take a meeting. You cannot tell anyone anything that happened to you. It was like I disappeared into witness protection or something. It was really strange. I was working 70 or 80 hours a week. I probably received 300 emails a day, 10 conference calls a day, like all this activity, and then nothing. And then just because the universe wanted to make sure I like really got the message, the next day, my partner and I broke up. So in a span of 24 hours, I felt like I'd lost my career, my income, my ability to provide for my children, a big piece of my identity, and my romantic partner. Gone. So at this point, I wish that I could tell you that I was like super enlightened and immediately ran off to seek professional help. But the reality was Grey Goose and I became real close friends. Yep. Gave my kids the debit card, said, don't worry about me with the big W, but take care of the groceries and order yourselves pizza and stuff. I need a moment. And by a moment, it turned into 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, I basically locked myself in my room. I drank way too much. I mean, any drinking during the day while you're watching Netflix seems like excessive, unless maybe you're on vacation. So I did that for 2 weeks, and I cried, and I drank, and I cried, and I drank, and I felt sorry for myself. And then I woke up after about 2 weeks, and I had this realization that nobody was going to rescue me but me, and that I was choosing to be a victim in this. All these things happened to me. I didn't do anything. Why is this happening? And so it was that day that I made the decision I was going to take charge of my destiny. I was going to take back my life from the situation. So I called a female executive friend, one of the very few people who knew what was really going on. And I said, look, I'm nearly suicidal. I've lost all these things. My kid is going off to a $50,000 a year university. My deal with my kids is they pay half, I pay half. I'm a solo parent, like I'm all they've got. I don't know what to do. And she said, I have the perfect person for you. She's in Boulder, Colorado. How many of you are familiar with the culture in Boulder, Colorado? At least 1, 2, 3, 4 of you. So Denver is like kind of the hip cosmopolitan city in Colorado. Boulder is where all the hippies go and live. The hippies and the really successful entrepreneurs, which we'll talk about later. So I was like, all right, Boulder, okay. She said, no, I promise you she's the one for you. And I thought, I'd done like talk therapy on and off over the years. I left a very abusive marriage, having a special needs child, but I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. So I drive to Boulder and I walk into this woman's office and immediately I was like, no, you're a hippie. She's sitting on a cushion. She's got on some weird beads. Oh, I don't know, maybe they're the ones I wear now. And I just thought, no way. I am like a type AAA executive. I have everything together and I work 80 hours a week and like, what can you teach me? Not coincidentally, earlier that morning, I had gone to see my Western medicine doctor. Back then I would have just said my doctor, but I don't use a lot of Western medicine anymore. And her answer for what I was going through were 3 things. A prescription for a sleeping pill, a prescription for an antidepressant, and a prescription for an anti-anxiety drug. And she said, take these 3 things and they'll help you get through this. And I knew I didn't want to do that, and I knew that I needed to be clear-headed going up against one of the biggest companies in the world, but I didn't know what else to do. And so then I walk into the hippie's office, and she can tell that I'm very reluctant, and she appealed to me through neuroscience, which is where we're going to get back to with this ACEs and some of these techniques. And she said to me, here's what's happening. The panic attacks you're feeling, the anxiety, the heart palpitations, the insomnia, your body is in fight or flight. Your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. So you've got your parasympathetic, sort of your autonomic nervous system that controls things like breathing and yawning, and then your sympathetic nervous system, which is like, there's a lion in the living room. Oh crap, right? It's that very primal fight or flight feeling that we have. And so she said, yours is in overdrive and out of balance. Would you be open to learning some techniques to activate your parasympathetic nervous system so we can bring things back in balance? I was like, do I have to do weird stuff? She was like, well, it'll probably seem weird to you, but yeah. And so I reluctantly began practicing these different techniques, and it worked. It worked. I didn't need sleeping medicine. I didn't need an antidepressant. I will say there were a few moments that I took anti-anxiety meds before some big sort of legal meetings that I had, but it was just getting a lot better. So we're still going through the process. My company has cut off my pay. Imagine going from 70 to 80 hours a week of working to like not being allowed to work or look for work. So my kids, they were kind of like, oh, the house is going to be super clean. You guys, I hated housework so much that I did therapy 5 days a week. I was just like, oh no, I'm not, that doesn't seem good. I'd rather go see the hippies in Boulder. And over time, I got into Reiki, which is energy healing. I started using an acupuncturist. I hired a meditation coach. And it became really clear to me that I was being given this gift of time. A solo parent of 6 children does not get months and months and months where you're not working and not allowed to work. And even though there was the financial pressure of, I don't know how this is going to turn out, I had faith in my legal team. And so I went on this really deep, deep healing journey. And it was through that journey that I was able to discover things like ACEs. So a particularly confronting moment for me happened when my therapist said to me one day, would you like to learn what your role is in everything that you are co-creating? I said, what are you talking about, co-creating? These things happen to me. She was like, well, I mean, there's more to it. Do you want to explore? And I thought, well, I have nothing else to do. Let's go on the most painful journey of my life. Sounds great. And we started peeling back these layers of the chaos. And all of a sudden, I started to see that the choices I made throughout my life were based on my brain wanting to reinforce my competency in chaos. The fact that I finished university in 2.5 years while my mother was dying of cancer, that's chaotic. Right? I'm going back and forth every weekend to see her, and I'm in corporate America at 19. I married very young. I was engaged at 20, married at 21, pregnant at 22. I had a husband in the military. He's traveling all the time. We're having kids. I'm doing my career. That's a lot of chaos. Also, P.S., 6 children is a lot of chaos. Do not recommend in case you're considering it. Love them all and they're great, but oh my goodness, to do that and manage a full-time career at the same time. And then I started even thinking about, I chose healthcare. Healthcare is constant chaos. Hospitals are open 24/7, 365, and there's always a crisis and people are dying and oh my God. And it simply reinforced to me how good I was at managing it all. So we're down this path and she looks at me on another day and she said, what would you ever do if you didn't have chaos in your life? I was like, shit, am I allowed to say, sorry. I don't know. I have not, what would that look like? And she said, would you like to start learning more about what it could look like? So we're on the path. I'm learning more. I'm employing more techniques. Lawyers are doing their thing. In the end, we ended up settling for my back pay, and they paid for therapy. I did not want to be associated with that negative energy and that chaos. I was learning to disassociate myself from chaos. And a huge, huge company, they could have dragged this out for years and years. And this was also happening now. We're at the end of 2015, and I was turning the age my mother died. So there's something very symbolic in that for me about not wanting to waste the time that I was now being given that she never had. And so I said, I'm going to walk away with my back pay. I have no idea how the rest of this is going to turn out, but I'm happy that this is over. And then my attorneys came back and said, oh, but you have one more decision to make. you can sue the guy. You can pursue a civil suit against your assailant. Okay? In the course of the nearly year-long investigation, 6 other women stepped forward to say this man had assaulted them. Pretty significant. We had a meeting, and they all said, you have to do this whole thing. We've given our statements. We don't want any part of it. You're going to be the out front person. You're going to be the media. You're going to be the everything. This guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My attorney said, we're here to back you. We'll do whatever you want. But in Colorado at the time, well, it hasn't changed because I'm still lobbying, but the statute of limitations for civil sexual assault was 1 year. Some people aren't even ready to talk to anybody or tell anybody for a year. So that's part of my advocacy now in my new life. But it was the day before the deadline. Day before. They were like, Heather, you have 24 hours to make a decision. Great. But hey, it's chaos, so maybe. I'm good at that. But all they said is we just have to file. You don't have to actually decide if you want to go forward, but you have to preserve your right. We got to get the paperwork in by the deadline if you want to do that. So I thought, well, that's reasonable, as long as I don't have to decide right now. So we filed the paperwork the next day electronically. 2 hours after the paperwork was filed, the dude shows up at my attorney's offices without his legal team, just him and his checkbook. And he says, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I had no idea, nobody told me. I didn't know Miss MacKenzie lost her entire career over this. I feel terrible. I drank too much and I misbehaved and this and that. And he actually used the phrase, I wish to atone for my sins. And the reason I remember that is because my attorney had no idea what it meant. And I was like, I think he was raised Catholic. Pretty sure I think that's it. That sounds like a Catholic thing. And so he was like, I want to atone for my sins and make up for this. And so here's a 7-figure settlement for her. In exchange, she has to sign all this paperwork that basically says none of this ever, ever, ever happened. Never happened. And of course they said, well, we have to call our client, blah, blah, blah. And so they tell me the story later that as he's leaving the office, he's again just, please extend my heartfelt apology. And he has his hand on the doorknob to walk out of their office, and he turns back and looks at them and he says, but please also let her know, should she choose to move forward with this case, I will decimate her in court. That seems like a sincere apology, right? Like, yeah, it seems like he really wants to atone for something. So they call me and they said again, we'll do whatever you want. There's certainly evidence and there were witnesses, but he's got really deep pockets. This could go on for years. You'll be painted as a gold digger, as a divorcee who's trying to get money, as a desperate single mother. All these things are going to happen. So our recommendation is you take the settlement. They've known me now for close to a year. They're like, we know your heart, and like you could go do good in the world with this money. You can turn it into something positive, but you may never work again. They said you may never work in enterprise or corporate America again after this. So you got to kind of protect that, and you have the 6 kids, and so our advice is take the money. And right away I was like, something doesn't feel right about that. I don't know what it is. But at this point now I'm a fully certified hippie, so I have to go to the top of a mountain and pray about it, as we do. So I took my meditation coach and we went away for the weekend, and she got me into this super great sort of space where I could access my subconscious, and like immediately 2 messages came through. 1, your silence is not for sale. 2, you have to forgive this man. I was like, what? Wrong message, wrong person. No. So we come back out of the meditation. I was like, I don't know, I got these messages, but they don't seem right. Let's try it again. It was like when you had, any of you when you were kids, did you have that magic 8-ball thing where you ask it a question, you shake it and ask it a question, and then if it gives you the answer you don't like, you're like, nah. This was the entire weekend. Just picture that, but with my poor meditation coach. I'm like shaking her, nah, that's not the right thing. It's not the right thing. Consistently throughout the weekend, those were my 2 messages. Drive back to the city, called my attorneys, I said I can't take the money. It's not what I'm supposed to do. And more importantly, I have to genuinely forgive this man. And they were just like, okay, crazy lady, we really think you should take the money, but we support you. And the more significant of the 2 you guys, was actually the forgiveness part. Like, how could I forgive a man who did essentially take my career completely off course? I was earning a lot of money back then, total uncertainty as to what I'm going to do professionally going forward. How could I genuinely forgive him? And you know what it was through? ACEs. It was my ability to think about him as a little boy and wonder what in the world must have happened to him as a child that created this pattern that he thought it was okay to harass and abuse and demean women. This was a man who's married with daughters. So what happened? So being able to take, in my mind's eye, take him as a really little boy, and then also see him as his highest spiritual self. Like, what is he really here doing? And he is a genius. He saves lives. He saves kids' lives for free in developing countries. It's not black and white. And so I was able to write him this letter in which I said, you are a healer. Clearly, you've been given a special gift that quite literally no other human on the planet has. He's the only one that does this particular type of procedure. And I said, I am now a healer too. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me this past year to go on my own deep healing journey and to find my own purpose in this lifetime. And I know that it is to help humanity heal in different ways. And I encourage you to look at the subconscious patterns that may be driving your behavior. Didn't give him like the ACEs study, but just a few words. So he actually came to my attorney's offices in person, and they, again, being smarter than I, said, maybe there's like a middle ground for you. And it turned out to be not a middle ground, it was way over here, but they said, maybe you should at least like get a few months or some of your salary to sort of give yourself a little runway. And so we did do that, which is why I don't name him, I don't name my company, I don't name the client, and I don't name where it happened. But I am allowed to tell the story, which is the most important part to me. And he came into the conference room, and they pushed the letter across the desk at him and explained that I wouldn't be taking this 7-figure settlement, but that it was important to me that he read this. And they said, I wasn't in the room, but they said he sat there very thoughtfully and read it at least once or twice, and then folded it up and put it in his pocket. What he did beyond that is not for me to know or decide, but I know with integrity that I did the right thing for me. And so this experience has led me to finding out my purpose in life. And I'm going to give you, I actually have 3 purposes, and then we'll talk a little bit about how those purposes are playing out in real life, and the initiatives that I'm involved in the United States and globally, and how it ties, because all of you, I'm sure, like, I thought this was a talk on entrepreneurship. What's happening? We're getting there, I promise. It's a journey. It's a journey. So my 3 life purposes became crystal clear to me. My first one is to help as many human beings as possible feel genuinely seen, heard, loved, and accepted. Because I believe that as humans, when we feel that intrinsically inside ourselves, man, that frees you up to pursue your real purpose. The tapes of, am I making enough money? Am I getting enough promotions? Do I have enough Instagram likes? Is my partner the right one? Is this the right thing? Is my car nice enough? All that crap goes away, and you get really crystal clear about what matters to you. So through whatever means possible, I try to help as many humans feel seen, heard, loved, and accepted. My second life purpose, Mark has already alluded to. I know that I am on this planet to connect people, ideas, and organizations in meaningful ways that accelerate their individual missions and sometimes co-create new ones. I've built this massive global network in the last 3 years, and it's working. I did a talk in Mackay 2 weeks ago. God, I've already been here like 2.5 weeks. I love your country, by the way. This is amazing. But I did a talk in Mackay, and a female entrepreneur is working on something. And I was like, I know just the woman. She needed some specific help. And I said, I know the woman who can help you. She's in Tel Aviv. And I connected them. So now somebody in Mackay, Queensland, Australia, is talking to a woman in Tel Aviv, Israel, about how they can accelerate each other's missions. I know that I'm part of that. And that was why I was so excited to come on this first month-long tour of Australia to meet lots of you and understand your missions and see where I can sort of plug and play in the different ways. My third purpose in life is to give voice agency, and access to the marginalized and underrepresented in society. Every one of us in this room carries privilege of some sort. If each of us were just to extend our privilege to somebody who didn't have it, who didn't have that access, A, you automatically diversify whatever group or organization that is, and B, you're doing the thing, you're giving the voice and the agency. And the example that I like to cite was this big, best entrepreneurs sort of a thing at the governor's mansion in Colorado, probably about a year ago. And so I got the invite, and it's a prestigious thing, and I'm excited. But I asked to see the guest list. And I will not pretend to know all 2.5 million people in Denver, but I know the majority in the startup ecosystem. And I looked over the list, and I didn't see a single woman of color on it, not one. So I called the organizers back, and I said, hey, can I bring 5 people with me? I know it's an invite-only event, but it would really mean a lot to me. Can I do it? And they were like, yeah, okay. It's like a 30-second phone call. And I brought 5 women of color to this event. They're perfectly capable of pitching, of giving their elevator speech, of networking, but they didn't have access to that group. And so this was something that was so easy for me to do and meant a lot to them. So let's get through a couple more slides, and then we'll talk about businessy stuff. So here are some of the techniques that are really, really effective in integrating childhood trauma. This is not about talk therapy. So talk therapy deals with your prefrontal cortex. It's your thinking brain. Trauma lies in our bodies. That's where we store it. And so you have to get to the back. You have to get to the reptilian brain, that fight or flight. So I won't go through all these. I didn't use all these, but they're very well-known and well-accepted techniques for integrating trauma. They use several of these with soldiers returning from war and are having great results with that. And so if this is of something of interest to you or a loved one that you know that you're like, they did have that kind of a childhood, or they are kind of stuck in a pattern, you might want to look into that. So purpose. This is one, I bet you guys, several of you have seen this, yeah? This slide? I don't know. It's one of my favorites though. So once I figured out what I was here to do, I had to figure out how to make it, how does that manifest? I can't just sit on a yoga cushion and be like, I'm gonna connect the world. It has to be a practical thing. And so somebody gave this to me, and I spent time writing next to each of those 4 circles. So what is it that I love to do? I love meeting new people, I love connecting people, I love speaking, right? What does the world need? What can you be paid for? And what are you good at? And so I had all these different things written down next to all 4 of those. And then I just found the commonalities. What is it that I can do in the world that is, as you see, the little center star is purpose. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how my purpose has manifested in entrepreneurship and how I got connected here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. But I have to leave you with this visual. This is one of my favorite pieces of art in the entire world. It was at Burning Man a year ago. This is who we are as adults. We have this protective shell, and these things have happened, and maybe we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want other people to know what we've been through. But inside each of us is the little child yearning for human connection. We are wired for connection. If you think about it, each one of us, every single person on this planet, not only began their life inside the womb of a woman, but was physically connected by the umbilical cord to another human being. It is in our DNA. It is who we are. And I'm a firm believer that through human connection and authenticity and vulnerability, that's how we advance society. That's how we make progress. That's how we save our planet. So I wanted to leave you with that visual. Here's ways we can all connect. I would love to be connected with all of you in whatever way you'd like to be. I'd love for you to follow me because I have some exciting new initiatives globally for regional-based entrepreneurs that I'm going to be launching hopefully in the next month or 2. But again, sort of that voice of the underrepresented, I think the regional entrepreneurs are underrepresented. People in Sydney don't need help. People in San Francisco don't need help. It's people in the regional communities who have awesome ideas and awesome companies even producing revenue, but they need that next sort of bump up. And so I have made a commitment. This will be part of my platform, is finding ways to highlight different regional startups and the specific things that they need, and sending that out into my network of thousands of global influencers who want to help entrepreneurs be successful. So please connect with me. That is yet to come.
Thank you so much, Heather. You've shared a lot there. Just before we go to Q&A, can you tell us a little bit about SheEO? Because that's one of the things you've been working on a lot the last few years, and I think incredibly powerful in terms of connecting particularly female founders with big ideas and grand challenges and access to some venture capital. So really fantastic model from what I've heard about it and read about.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about SheEO and how we might adopt a version of that here? And I hear there might be something launched at Myriad, but we probably can't talk about that yet.
Rumor has it, I don't know. Yeah, SheEO is an audacious global initiative launched by a true visionary, Vicki Saunders. She's a serial entrepreneur based in Toronto and has started and exited several companies, took at least one public, and she noticed the disparity in funding for female founders, for female entrepreneurs. And so she launched a pilot of SheEO in her home country, Canada, in 2015, in which she got 500 women to each put $1,000 into a fund with no return. It's an act of radical generosity. You are paying something forward. So then she's got $500,000 and funded 5 companies, 5 female-led companies that have some sort of social impact as part of their mission. And the idea is that the capital, so it's a loan, it's not a gift. It is a loan that is paid back over 20 equal installments, so it's a 5-year loan. But as the capital comes back in, it's recycled back out to more companies. And so I met her at a leadership conference, female leadership conference in San Francisco in 2015. I heard the model and I said, when you are ready to launch in the United States, I want to be part of the founding team there. I love this. I think we can do it. And she said, well, we're actually planning to launch in the US in 2016. We're going to launch in LA and San Francisco. I was like, well, I live in Denver. And I think we can do this in Denver. And we had to get I did get her on a video call with some other leaders in my community, female leaders, and we were all like, no, we can do this. I'm happy to tell you guys that Colorado raised more money for female entrepreneurs than LA and San Francisco combined. A region did it. You guys can do it too. You guys can do it too. So yes, I was part of the founding team in the US in 2016. We just founded our second round of companies from this last cohort, and we launched this past year in New Zealand. So they just announced their first 5 female ventures that got funding, and it continues to expand worldwide, and it's maybe coming to a place that starts with an A and ends in an A and has kangaroos. I don't know. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you. And it's great timing because some of you will know that we've just incorporated Suncoast Angels, so our local angel group, Daryl and myself and a few others have been involved in that for a number of years. So we're really looking at the standard angel model, but what are some new innovative things that we can do to better connect entrepreneurs and some of those high net worth individuals that are on the Sunshine Coast. So we've got 2 sides of the market there. So you'll hear more about that soon. Heather, what are some of the top 2 or 3 biggest challenges you see for Aussie startups going to America? It's a big country. What are some of the challenges, and what through some of your connections might you be able to? We've started talking about some of them, but perhaps the biggest challenges and how to get around.
I would say a few things. First of all, part of what drew me to coming to Australia and specifically Queensland was that you mimic what we have in Colorado. So in Colorado, we have one big city center, which is Denver. It's about 2.5 million people, so it seems about the same size as Brisbane. And then you have all these regional places that are geographically disparate and maybe siloed and not really working together. We faced, and still face, but we're making a lot of progress, similar challenges in Colorado. Denver's really the only big city. There are a couple other small, I call them small ones, a couple 100,000 people, and then it's mountain towns that are all over the Front Range and the Western Slopes, and a lot of those are inaccessible geographically in the winter. Like the mountain passes closed, so unless you have a reindeer or something, like you're not gonna really get to those places. So it was about how to create like a hub and spoke model. So I was really interested to come here and learn about that. I would say that one of the top things for Australian entrepreneurs who want to enter the US market would be to pick your very specific geographic spot and market, like your market niche to start with, right? I think our population is like 10 times that of Australia. You can't just go to the US and do it everywhere. You know, somebody asked me the other day in one of my presentations, what reasons so now as part of my whole life purpose, I do a lot of mentoring of startups and individual mentoring of founders and judging pitch nights and working with Techstars and RVC and other organizations. And the three things that I see that are in common when companies fail: poor leadership, poor execution, and trying to go too big too fast. And so I think that's a real danger with the United States, because you guys see this enormous market, right? And you're like, all those Americans. But I think it's really important to find a trusted advisor who either has spent a significant amount of time in America, still lives in America, whatever it is, to help you figure out, like, for example, our state, oops, sorry, that was me, it's all me. Our state, Colorado, we are aiming to be the #1 digital health ecosystem in the United States by 2020. And we've risen up in the rankings the last few years. This was a collaboration between government, private industry, and entrepreneurship. We're now ranked #3 in the United States, and it's 2018, so I think we're gonna get there. So if you were a digital health company, I would be saying to you, Colorado's a great place to start. We're super collaborative, we have a lot of resources, there's a lot of interest in health tech. If you're doing ag tech, maybe you're gonna go out to closer to like some of our, we actually have innovation centers now in Iowa, in South Dakota, and some of our the middle of the country states. So I think it's really important to know geographically where to go and what slice of the market you want to start with. Because if you go too big, too broad, too soon, it dilutes everything, and I think your chances of long-term success are greatly lowered.
The digital health progress you've made really got the mayor's attention, so he wants some follow-up discussions around that.
Great. Alex, change that for citizenship. Kidding.
Hey.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
It's a deal to be done.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of ex-corporate people that are now working on their passionate, that found their purpose and passion and working on their startup. And clearly there's a much more higher awareness now of mental health, founders' health, physical health and mental health, and the fact that they just have to be so resilient to manage all those challenges that many of our entrepreneurs here on the coast are going through, have been through. Any comments about that, the founders' health?
Yeah, for sure. I'm super passionate about, I'm just passionate about mental health in general, as you could probably tell since I spoke about ACEs for more than 15 minutes. And I'm passionate because 5 of my 6 children are neurodiverse. This is the term I'm trying to get sort of into the mainstream. It's not mentally ill or this disordered or whatever. It's neurodiversity. It's just another form of diversity. I have 2 kids with bipolar disorder. And in the United States, at least, in the founder community, there are really well-documented statistics saying that founders and creatives have mood disorders of some sort at 2 times the rate of the general population, which I think is kind of part of their genius and creativity in a way. Like, one of my kids who has bipolar disorder is a chef in a Michelin star restaurant at 25 years old. Like, he's using that sort of to his advantage. But I think the combination of having a higher percentage, perhaps, of mood disorders in that population, and then in my work with founders, both in groups and individually, I found that this is like that super isolating journey. So you guys, are you entrepreneurs out there finding that? Right? So something comes up, you don't want to go confide in your investors, you're holding their money. You don't want to talk to your employees about it because their livelihood depends on you and your success. And you probably don't want to talk to your family because you've either mortgaged your house or cashed out your savings, or you're working these ridiculous hours, and it's just, so you like hold it all in. And I think that's really, really dangerous. In groups, I've noticed, so I'll be with a group of founders, and they're all together, and it's, things are going great, and we're getting new investment, and we're raising a round, and we're meeting our KPIs, and our go-to-market's this, and all that. It's just this sort of thing. And this is amongst themselves. We're not talking pitching on a stage. That's a different thing. You do have to be like, I got figured out, right? For the most part when you're on a stage. This is just like an informal networking. And then these same founders meet with me one-on-one, tears. Men and women, tears. I don't know how I'm gonna make payroll. I hired the wrong co-founder. Oh my God, I shouldn't have made this deal with this investor because now they want control over what we're doing. All those different things. So I'm seeking to find ways to create a psychologically safe space, and I always use this symbol because it's like creating this container where whatever happens inside of it, people feel safe. But I think there has to be more authentic and vulnerable sharing around what the journey really is. And Mr. Joe Houlihan is somewhere out here, and he there he is. He was also, yeah, you should have. He was also on the Startup Catalyst mission to America, and he said something that really stuck with me the other day. He said, "A problem shared is a problem halved." I don't know why I'd never heard that at 51 years old, but that's so great. And so I think that there has to be that vulnerability and that authenticity in the sharing. And the only part that I can play is being vulnerable and authentic and sharing my journey and my story. I'm not founding a company, so I can't really speak to that. But my hope is that in me talking about the experiences I've had without shame, without embarrassment, without guilt, that it will hopefully encourage and empower others to be more vulnerable.